Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Wellness Dojo podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about how hard is it actually to achieve your black belt. From two people who have gone through that journey, we're excited to share our experiences, and we hope that you can take some value. Enjoy the episode. Here we are. We're back.
We're back again.
We back.
What a great part of the week, I gotta say.
Yes, I look forward to podcasting day every day of the week.
Same here, partner.
Cool, man. I'm excited. We're going to play a fun little game at the beginning here.
Okay. Let's do it.
We're going to play a game called Over Under. Basically, we're just going to list off an item. We've reached out to some friends. We've reached out to social medias and got some feedback on what some good topics would be to play Over Under. Basically, we're going to say, is this overrated or is this underrated? And we'll give a quick explanation on why.
And we have to take a side. I'm such a nuanced person. I'm like, maybe it's over, maybe it's under.
Yeah.
Are we like splitting the line and we have to take a side here?
Yeah, we're splitting the line. You got to take a side. Or, I mean, you could say it's like, I guess you could say it's properly rated.
Okay.
But let's try and pick a side here.
All right.
Because I'm the same. I struggle with being decisive sometimes.
No, we just gotta be adults and we just gotta make a decision here. Okay,
let's be adults. Okay, are you ready for the first one?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, overrated or underrated knowing how to fight?
Knowing how to fight in general. There's two trains of thought here. As an individual, sure, it's a great thing because you want to know how to defend yourself. As a society, that's a frightening prospect for everyone to know how to fight. I've heard that song, Everyone's Been Kung Fu Fighting. And it's kind of upbeat and kind of light, but it sounds scary.
Yeah,
everyone's flying around with expert timing and kicking each other. And does that become how we solve our problems in society? I mean, if it's with controlled like point fighting, I would be okay with that. But I fear a society where everyone knows how to fight. I don't know why. I've heard that song and I just can't get that image out of my head. It's chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're saying underrated or overrated.
Overrated.
Yeah.
Because I'm frightened.
Okay, so I'm going to take the opposite stance. I'm going to say underrated, knowing how to fight. I think the opposite. If everybody knew how to fight, if we knew that everybody was a lethal weapon out on the streets, maybe there would be less conflict.
Yeah.
Right?
There is that too.
There's no question, right? But also just like the general thing of just knowing how to fight and whether that's overrated, underrated. I think it's underrated because I think that we, in a society where we want to be careful about our aggression levels and those types of things. I think there's also another side where like for your own personal confidence, knowing that you can go walk the streets and if something was to happen, that you could probably defend yourself.
Yeah, and at least get away.
Feel safe. And I think especially for women and young girls, I think it's super, super underrated knowing how to fight. And that's something that I've seen in teaching martial arts is seeing more and more young girls come in. I think it's really important for confidence and just for general safety too.
Yep.
So I'm taking the mature stance, saying it is underrated.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens when everyone's kung fu fighting. But
that's right. We'll see.
Okay, do I give you a topic now?
You can give me the next one here.
Okay, let's go with birthdays.
Yeah. Okay, birthdays. I'm gonna go with birthdays are also underrated, and I'll get some pushback. I know I will get some pushback for this one, but. Birthdays, I'm going to say underrated. It's funny because I've never been a big birthday person. Like I don't like throw big birthday parties for myself. I don't really celebrate like that. But I mean, every time it's my birthday, first of all, you get that kind of blast of gratitude from Facebook and stuff too. Where everybody's like, hey, happy birthday. You're like, oh, I do have people in my life that recognize me. But even more than that, I think it's a matter of just a reflection on the fact that you were actually born. Like, and Gary Vaynerchuk says it all the time, right? And he's like, the odds of you actually like making it to that egg, like is so astronomically insane that it's worth celebrating. So I'm going to say underrated because, that off chance that your mom said no that night instead of yes, like that off chance, I'm saying like, Okay, the chances of me actually being here are so slim that my birthday, it's underrated. We should celebrate that every year.
Okay. Well, I'm going with overrated. You were already born. Stop celebrating it. We celebrated your birth the day you were born. Get over it. No, birthdays, they're special. And it's, I mean, especially like up until the age, I don't know, 21 or something. Because there's all these landmarks and just like seeing your kids, how excited they are for their birthday. Like that, you know, it kind of reinvigorates me again as an adult. But
Totally.
As an adult, I have to say for me personally, overrated. I love how you said blast of gratitude on Facebook for your birthday. And I did the opposite. I turned off. I put my birthday was private this year so no one would message me.
Yeah. And yet I still did.
Okay. Maybe you want to do one more?
Yeah. I'll give another one here. Let's go with staying informed.
Okay, that's a tricky one, especially these days. I'm going to go overrated because anytime you're staying informed, you're watching the news, you're on the news, and my impression of the news is you're like putting the weight of the world on your shoulders constantly with all of the bad stuff and all the tragedy. And you know, we're built and we've developed as a species to care about our friends and our family and people in the immediate vicinity. Because that's hard enough and that's enough of an emotional burden. But like, you know, to put the weight of the world on your shoulders, I think is too much. I'm experiencing that, you know, just watching the news too much these days. So I'm going to say staying informed is overrated.
Yeah. And I'm going to agree with you on that one. I also say overrated. And, you know, the news is one thing, but I also think like this idea of like staying informed or getting informed, even in health and wellness, like it can become overrated very easily. And I don't say that as somebody who's like, I'm not like against like science-based evidence or anything like that, but I am against people who think they have to know every detail before they can even start or before they can even attempt something. Like, I think it can be overrated. Like, okay, so the science says this study shows this, but maybe I have 10 clients who have shown the opposite things happen. Well, when we're looking at it, I think just as like information, then it's really easy to forget that we're also humans, right? We're like, you know, this study showed this. Okay, but that might not work for this particular person. And that's where, for me, it becomes overrated, staying informed on the news or on the newest trend or the newest study that came out. It's important to stay up to date with those things, but I think it can be overrated in a sense of, I think sometimes we look too much into that and not into like the practicality of things as well in day-to-day life.
Especially with nutrition studies. I think that's why you find there's so many inconsistencies because like you said, we are all so different. And so you take one population from one part of the earth and one population and, you know, genetics is going to play a huge part in that. Yeah. And so there's so much inconsistency, even with nutritional research. Yeah, it is hard, but that's why go back to basics. There are some basics.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Okay. We will save some of these for another time as well. We'll do this again. If you guys like the overrated, underrated, let us know. Comment below and
give us more ideas for topics.
Yeah, and throw some other topic ideas out there. We'll do some more overrated, underrated for you guys. We're going to get into today's topic now then.
Let's do it.
Okay, so today we're talking about how hard is it actually to get your black belt? Because this is something that I think comes up a lot. People often wonder like, well, this person got their black belt, big whoop, right? Or people like put this like big mysterious thing around getting your black belt. Well, we're two people who have actually done it. So let's talk about it.
Yes. Yes. I'm really excited to talk about this topic. You know, it's something that, I don't get to talk about much.
Yeah.
No, just to kind of strangers or whatever. It just doesn't come up very often, but
it's true.
It was such a huge part of my life. And you know, what I've gathered from it and what I carry forward from it is something that I hold very dear and that's very special for me. So this started at a very young age for myself, like I think before the age of 5. And what was happening, this is like, we're talking like, so I grew up like late 80s, early 90s kind of thing. And there was this real westernization of Asian culture, and it really manifested in movies and in pop culture. So this is something like American Ninja was like this series of movies that was coming out, and as a young impressionable kid, there was just something about like learning some style and making yourself like these ninjas were like part detective, part fighters, parts like very moral, and their moral compass was pointed the right way, and they're the good guys essentially. Good guys. And of course, they're flying around the screen, which is really attractive to a 5-year-old or whatever. So, my parents could see that I was really interested in this. Anytime something like that came on the TV, and they took me to a martial arts school, and my dad tried to get me in, even though I think their minimum age was 6, and I was something like 4 or 5. And I could tell that the conversation wasn't going that great. This is like one of my earliest real memories too, and so I just started doing jump kicks around the room, because then the instructor will see how great I am and definitely let me into the class. So I'm like running around the room going like, hi-ya, like without irony, like totally serious. But I was a bit young for that class, but I eventually got into a class, and I was just so passionate about it already as a young kid. And I just went at it really hard. And I think that some of the instructors could even see a little bit of potential in me from an early get-go. I remember kind of being left off to the side and being taught a new form, or being brought to the back to be taught sparring at a very young age and things like that. So I always had a bit of a proclivity towards it, I would say. And I've kind of got the body of kind of like the classic gymnast body. So I was able to do the jump kicks really well, and, have a good low center of gravity for when I needed it. But really, I feel like I started really getting belts and getting into it when I was 8.
Okay.
And this started in Edmonton, Alberta, a place called Temple Kung Fu. And then eventually I moved to Calgary, and that's where I started the style that you and I got our black belts in. And so that was, I think I was about 9 or 10 at that point. I don't want this to drone on too long. So I could just kind of keep going. And then when I was 10, this happened. Yeah. But generally speaking, it was a large commitment of my life for a decade or two, depending on how you want to look at it. And what I learned, there was a lot, but one was you have to sacrifice to make something happen. Going to martial arts as a child, like 3 times a week after school, is no picnic for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Right. And then you start getting a little bit older, and your friends want to do other things, and they want to hang out, and like groups are getting together and going to parties. And like, I'm still saying, well, no, because Saturday morning I have to get up and do special training and things like that. So I guess the first lesson that I want to bring to the forefront is just, yeah, you have to, you do. And sometimes what you have to sacrifice is something very valuable to you, right? These are old lessons, right? And they're very true. And sometimes you have to sacrifice something valuable, which would be like maybe some of the social aspect of me growing up and being included, and some of these things now that on reflection, like I didn't need more partying in my youth. You think you do at that point, but I didn't. Yeah. But yeah, so life for me was different through junior high and high school, because I was so committed to this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I could listen to you talk about it for like hours probably, because you may or may not know this, but like when I started Kung Fu, like you were like my role model. Like I was like looking up to you always, and like I wanted to be like Riley. I wanted to be able to do that kick like he's doing and that kind of thing. And so really cool conversation for me as well. And that's why I'm kind of sitting here just, listening and kind of getting, really taking it in. And these are things that you and me haven't even really talked about this before. Nope. So it's kind of fresh. So, what would you say, like, what was the point or what was the thing that made you decide, okay, I want that black belt? Like, at what point did you set that goal? At what point was that like your target?
There's always the aura of the black belt. I remember there was a magazine when I was younger literally called Black Belt Magazine. And I loved flipping through the pages and seeing everyone with their black belts on. So there's always the aura about the black belt. But for me, I think it was when I started competing. And you start having some success with enough hard work and things like that. You start winning, you start looking towards the future, where can I go with this? But then also at the tournaments, you start seeing the other black belts as well. And there is an aura to them, because they know that all eyes are on them, right? And so they're carrying themselves in a certain way that's it's like this humble strength, which is really cool. And some of the loudest, like craziest, like most aggressive fighters are some of the most humble, chill people, just walking around. They're saying hi, giving time to everyone, even strangers who just want to say hi to them. So there was something about that too. It's like these people are all carrying themselves very well and setting great examples, and then they can perform it too. I'm like, what's going on here? These people have something. Yeah,
super cool. What do you think? So you set that goal, you decide, okay, I want to be like those people. I want to achieve that same thing. I want to be in that same place. Throughout that journey, what would you say was the hardest part about getting there? Because, I mean, like you kind of joked before we started, like with the title of today, like how hard is it to get your black belt? Well, it's kind of rhetorical. Obviously, it's hard. If it was easy, everybody would have their black belt, and everybody doesn't have their black belt. So what do you think was like the hardest part about that process?
Well, hitting plateaus is always really tough. You're gonna find successes. You jump up a little bit. That feels awesome. You get recognized. You get the accolades, and then suddenly you start plateauing a little bit. Either people in your own club see what you're doing, see the tricks you're doing, catch up to you, or people in tournaments. And like sometimes, if you're that good, you will actually elevate people to your level, and then things get tough for you.
Yep,
that's how it's supposed to be. Yeah, so there's that, and then there's also really unique to our club and our instructor is seeing so much success in tournaments, beating other students, being very successful against other clubs, and then your own instructor kind of being like, yeah, well, it wasn't a great performance, and we need to do better, and just like 20 years of that.
we talked in our last episode about that external and internal judgment a little bit, and like he was definitely a good practice of that negative external and like getting used to that, because you're right, like you would go to a tournament, you would win first place, and you'd be like, well, you didn't deserve first place there. Like I wouldn't have. I remember specific times being so happy I just won first place, and I walked off. He's like, I wouldn't have given you first place. Or he was one of the judges, and he came, and the first thing he would say to me when I walked off was, I scored you third place. Okay, thanks.
So this brings me to another concept of, so that was kind of tough, but so our instructor had this this concept of never be satisfied, and for that I think like it's mixed for me for how I've taken that forward in my life, because I think you should be satisfied at certain stages of achievement and accomplishment. And of course, it's not black and white. And I know what he was saying, but that type of mentality, that taste of it, that is the champion's mentality. And you do kind of have to cross, what do they call it, crossing the Rubicon, like into that mentality if you want to get there. Yeah. And it's a tough one to ride,
It is.
To never be satisfied.
It is. And especially for like a child. Right, like that's a really tough thing for a child, but like we sit back now and look at that and go, okay, like we understand the benefit that gave us now, but only now do we understand that benefit. Whereas at that time, I remember times where I was like pissed off, or I was like almost in like tears, because I thought that I had worked so hard and I was so proud of myself, and then to be like cut down like that, in a sense, like it was a difficult thing. But like you said, like we now can reflect on that and understand that there's a benefit to that. And
we've both been mentioning when I won this tournament. The reason we're winning tournaments is because of that mindset.
Absolutely.
And because we're not getting applauded. We're saying, no, keep going, keep working harder, not good enough. And like it does create champions. You just have to moderate at what cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember pushing back once on him when he was giving me criticism after a win. And I was like, I won that match like 10-0. And he was like, yeah, but your punches need to be cleaner. Right. And I remember kind of pushing back, and he said, Kyle, there will always be somebody out there who's better at you at what you're trying to do. He said, I don't care what you're doing. It could be your school. It could be your career. There's always somebody who's working harder and who's doing better than you're doing. Always, inevitably. And that always really stuck with me, because what that did was it took me off of this pedestal that I was trying to put myself on, and forced me to only look at what I needed to do to improve myself and forget about who I just beat. Like that stuff, like at that moment for me, it was like, well, it really doesn't matter. Like the competition is there for me. It's not there for me to stand out against these people, right? It's always about self-improvement. It's not about that I was first place at this tournament. I could now, when I compete, I'll win second place, but I'll walk away with so much pride because I was like, okay, I know that I did better at this thing that I was working on, even if I won second. And I think that's where that kind of comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. And does that stuff ever come in handy later in life? You know, it's that kind of thing. Because it you know, there's so many variables in life and things change, and like, but the one thing that stays constant is you have to be accountable to yourself, and you have to have your own realistic and attainable standards and all that for yourself, and that's kind of what stays constant, and situations and things like that change. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So kind of hardest part for you, very interesting concepts there. What do you think? So fast forward, you achieve your black belt. You now have it. Like you worked super hard. You made those sacrifices. You had to deal with some of that constructive criticism, sometimes not so constructive, but constructive criticism nonetheless. What changed for you after you get your black belt? What's different? What do you learn from that experience? How is your life different now?
Well, you have the memory of being young and seeing those black belts walking around at tournaments, and you realize that you're part of the club now. You have eyes on you. You have to be very respectful of other clubs, of your competitors. You have to be very careful of how you lose in tournaments. So that changed, I guess. It's kind of like, you have to carry yourself a certain way. But then also the really fun part is like now you're competing with the other black belts. And so you are maybe one of the top one or two people from your school. They're sending one of the top from their school. And you know, that is how it goes down and how it happens. And you develop rivalries, and things get like years long rivalries. And so that changed too. Just now, now you're in the black belt category, competing and fighting. And that was, I mean, just what an experience.
Yeah.
That is. Yeah.
Very cool.
I'm fine losing for myself, but losing with your club's pride on the line is something totally different.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You go to bigger tournaments and stuff like that too. And like the pressure of that, of like when you are the black belt and you are now representing your club, it's a different ball game, right?
Yeah, but it can also elevate you. I guess it's not all bad. It's not like crushing pressure. Like it can really elevate you. And I think I did things, you know, almost beyond my capabilities or, you know, perceived talents that I would do in tournaments, knowing that I had that weight on my shoulders too. And that was nice to see that I am one of those people that can perform when it really matters. And that you can translate to taking exams in school and having a job interview and like all these things, right? And so wow, that too, like having the adrenaline going, but still having to be precise. Your heart is pumping, but you're trying to calm down your breathing. Everyone's yelling at you, but you're trying to calm down your mind.
Yeah.
It's just the whole scenario, all those juxtapositions is it's quite the experience. Yeah.
I don't know about you, but like for me, even when I'm talking about it, or even like throughout the pandemic here where competitions haven't been a thing, like thinking back to competitions of the year before, those types of things, like I literally start to feel like the physical preparedness or like the anxiousness and stuff about getting ready to go up. Like if I sit and actually picture myself getting ready to compete in that moment, like you're describing, like people are cheering for you, you got your team behind you, that pressure's on. Like even now, like I can feel my heart just right? It starts to get faster and faster. And you're right, like that feeling translates into everything else that you do.
And your own students think you're invincible.
Exactly.
And so that's That's a big pressure.
Even more pressure. Even more pressure. I'm the instructor now. I have to perform.
Yeah. Yeah, and our club was known for doing some pretty incredible things at our belt levels because it was so tough and stringent. I remember winning a grand championship. So for everyone out there, this is like they take the winners from each category, like different belt levels, different ages, different genders, and they just put them together and say, okay, now you're all going at it. And I won that when I was like an orange belt or something, and like fought a black belt for it for the and like won. And that was, you know, I mean, that was amazing, almost unheard of at that point.
Yeah, and you know, I don't know if this is maybe the, I don't know if I might get in trouble for saying this. I don't know.
Ooh, controversy?
Controversy.
Every podcast needs controversy.
Controversy within our club, but I mean, really, like we would get almost like looked at in a negative way at times because they would say like, "How can your orange belt beat my black belt?"
Oh, I see.
Right? Like you know what I'm saying? Like we would have that. Like, and I've had personal experiences where I've had you know, other instructors that would complain and say he can't be competing with my black belts, and my instructor would say why? Like he's an orange belt, like that kind of thing, right? And then people would say like, well, he should be a black belt. You should promote him, right? And the reason for that was because, in my opinion, this is only my opinion, but like I don't think it was ever a business for our instructor. Like I think it was always about the martial art. Yeah, it was never about the business. Like
he's a purist.
It was a part-time thing that he was doing. It was, and he had so much passion for what it meant to achieve that yellow belt, to achieve that orange belt, that green belt, and that black belt, right? And I think even today, like, do you know the exact number, how many black belts he's awarded? Like,
less than a dozen, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it was like maybe a dozen by the time he had retired.
Yeah,
right? And that's in like 30 years of teaching. Like,
I think he wasn't he saying 1 out of 1,000 students he sees gets their black belt,
something like that.
Something like that.
And so that's a difficult thing as well, right? It's difficult in the competition sense because there's a different outlook on that of like, if you are operating a business, you kind of have to keep people happy, right? You have to keep clients and students. You do have to keep them happy in a sense. But that doesn't take away from any other club or anything like that. I'm just trying to highlight like the journey that you and I went on through that instructor. It was very difficult, and I think it's difficult for anybody to achieve their black belt. But we went in knowing that it was going to be a long journey. Like we went in knowing like I will not be getting my black belt anytime soon.
Right.
It's a tough thing to shoot for.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Okay, so maybe let me just put a ribbon on my story. So yeah, competed as a black belt, had a lot of success, you know, won some Canadian titles, was a Pan American competition medalist, things like that. And then I went to the full contact side. So then I joined up with a couple of clubs in the city. And then eventually when I went to school in Ontario, and I joined up with a club there called the Toronto Striking Academy. Hey, Nealon. And so I started competing full contact a little bit. Pretty brutal sport. Got a rib injury that still kind of pulls on some muscles in that area. I snapped my ACL while I was kickboxing, and that was a 10 to 12 month recovery from the surgery. And then I got I had a very interesting 360-degree scan done at the dentist. I guess they just do the scan every 5 years. And it turns out I have like porous holes in one side of my jawbone, my mandible. And I was told never to do contact sports again, but I didn't listen. But that's... So I guess that's kind of the story from 8 to 38 or whatever have you for 30 years of martial arts. But but let's get to you.
Okay.
Let's get to you, and so let's hear a little bit about your story, and maybe the question is like, when did you know you wanted to become a black belt?
Yeah. So for me, I started martial arts when I was about 6 years old, I believe I started. And I was was doing like 3 different sports at the time when I started Kung Fu. And I was doing soccer, I was doing baseball, all these different, well, it was T-ball at that time. And so for a few years, I was doing like 3 different sports. And eventually it came time, my parents said, Kyle, you got to choose one of these sports. Like you have to choose. And so I decided Kung Fu was the one for me. I decided I'm going to stick with Kung Fu. This is I still can't really explain it. Like Kung Fu, I think with martial arts, there's some, like you're either with it or you're not. Like it sticks with you or it doesn't. Because I've had a lot of friends that have tried it and they're just like, I don't know how you do this. Like it's not for me. It was for me. Like I knew right away. And when early on, I remember wanting to get my black belt, and it really was like looking at people like you, but mostly looking at my instructor. And I remember looking at my instructor and watching him and seeing how he commanded a room and seeing the respect that people had for him. And I was like, I want to be in that position. Like I want to be leading a group. I want people to respect me in that same way that I respect him. I want people to come to me for help when they need it or when they need advice and those types of things. And so I was really looking for that. So it wasn't just about getting a black belt. For me, it was like I wanted to be in that leadership position. And I knew that from very early on that I wanted to do that. It was, I think, probably once I got my yellow belt that I was actually thinking, okay, I think maybe I can do something here.
So you're like 6 years old thinking I need to take over this room like a
pretty much
little tyrant?
Pretty much. I know it sounds ridiculous right now, but
no, I'm just kidding.
But no, pretty much that's when it all started for me. That's when I got my eyes on the prize.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so through your journey, what were like let's go with some of like the main takeaways and lessons. Like I said, you had to sacrifice something to make it happen. What were some of maybe the main takeaways and lessons? Let's start there. Yeah.
So main takeaways and lessons, so many.
Yeah, there are. It's an unfair question almost,
Yeah, and I would mirror a lot of the same things that you already talked about, of like those lessons of like learning to sacrifice things, learning to take criticisms, and learning to develop as an individual, and focusing less on what that means for how people are viewing me. And that's something competition did, I think, more specifically than getting my black belt. But it's like really learning that it's not so much about how people view you, although ego is always going to kind of creep in and become a part of that. And you're going to want to look good, and it's nice to have people cheer for you and to win first place and people look up to you and stuff like that. But it was the biggest lesson for me was about the personal journey, I think. And then, like I said, all those other things too, like as any martial artist, if you're listening, like the hard work, the discipline that it takes to
the repetition is insane.
The repetition, like just all of those things all play together. But for me, if I was to wrap it up in a pretty bow, it would be just that, knowing that it's about the personal journey and nothing else.
And we had a club creed, and one of the themes of it was, to really understand ourselves, build ourselves up as individuals so we can give back to the community.
Yeah.
Kind of thing too.
Yeah, it was always about giving back. And it was always about helping the people that are below you, in a sense, right?
Well, yeah, seniority and belts. Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and
gotta be careful when you say that kind of thing.
Yeah. So
but yes, in a belt system hierarchy. Cool. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, but also in a real life situation, this comes in too, right? If you have, for example, kids like I do, then it's like, I really believe that my journey through martial arts has made me a better parent. Because I'm not thinking about my kids in a sense of, I think a lot of people, and this heavily involves sports as well, but I think there's a lot of parents out there that want their kid to be successful so that they will look good.
Oh, of course.
Right?
That's that's what baby beauty pageants are, isn't it?
Absolutely, right? But it's like parents who are pushing their kids like to be a black belt, for example, because they want their kid to be in that position. They want to be able to brag about their kid. I'm not that parent. like on almost a regular basis. My kids are all in my martial arts class, and almost on a regular basis. Hey, is this still something that you want to do, or is there something else that you want to do?
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not saying I'm the perfect parent, but what I'm saying is martial arts taught me that whether it's in martial art or whether it's in life, we have to look at things as like what is best for the individual, not what's best for myself always, right?
Yeah.
And looking at my experience and saying, how can I pass what I've learned on to them in a way that benefits them? And that's what martial arts does, right? When you're teaching, when you're helping junior students, when you are in that black belt level, it's no longer about me going and competing and winning that grand champion trophy. It's now about watching my students. How can I give what I learned back to them so that they can go and win grand champion trophies if they want to?
Awesome. Love it. Okay, let's get down to brass tacks here. When did it get hard? What was hard about it?
Yeah, it got hard when I got bored. Like I've talked about this many times before, but there was times where I got so bored of doing it, and it was because I saw my friends going out to parties and stuff. Like especially as I was getting older, my friends would be partying, or maybe they'd be playing street hockey after school.
Yeah.
But I had to get home and get homework done so that I could go and get to Kung Fu on time, right? And as you get older and as you advance more, it's not just about going and getting better at Kung Fu, but it's also about being there because you are one of the advanced students now, and you have to be there for
You're
those
already
kids.
giving back to...
It starts very early on, right? Like as soon as you have a yellow belt, okay, you're going to help the white belts now, right? And so there's a responsibility there, and having that responsibility, like you said, for so long. I started martial arts when I was 5 or 6. I got my black belt when I was 18.
I think that was the same for me.
Right? And so it's a long time. That's a long time to be working
especially
at something.
during your developing years, and there's so many things to be discovered.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to have a very strong reason that keeps you going back, and loyalty and commitment and things like that. They're fine, and those are great skills to have later in life. We might almost have to go into like, do you regret it?
Yeah.
I don't think either of us do, not even for a second.
Yeah, I think I could say I don't regret it for a second. I've had times in my life where I thought, man, I wish, and even in like other things, being a young parent and stuff like that, is like, looking back and saying, oh man, like what would have been different if I didn't do that? What experiences would I not have missed out on? And really, it just doesn't matter. Right? Like what I got from that experience is what I got from that experience, and it's really been a big part of who I am today. But to go back to your question on what was difficult, it was getting bored, and you kind of mentioned like plateauing a little bit. That was tough too, is the in-betweens. But the thing that really kept pushing me towards that was the belts, like having that next belt to shoot for.
Yep. Because
I remember specific times of like before, like when I was an orange belt, and it took me over a year to get my green belt, right? And it's like, is this ever going to happen? Like you're starting to have doubts, you're starting to question it, then you're starting to think about, maybe I go try something else for a bit, because this is just, I've been doing the same thing, going through the same motions for so long now. And then I remember having conversations with my dad, and he would say, you're so close to getting that green belt right now. Why don't we just let's finish this commitment to working towards this thing, get there, and then you can decide. And every time I would do that, I would get that next belt. It was like a spark, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, I'm one step closer to the black belt now. And it's, that's something that I've taken into my coaching, as through, our coaching program and stuff like that. It's like giving yourself small things to shoot for and small things to achieve that almost distracted me away from the black belt. It's like, until I was really close to my black belt, I don't know that I thought about it that much, because I was always looking at that next thing, perfecting that next technique, getting that next belt, working towards that next first place medal, or trying to beat that person that beat me last time. Like those types of things, it always kind of distracted me away from that bigger goal.
And the structure of the program was really brilliant too, because you get that next color, and then it unlocks things for you. You do learn new things and new techniques and new forms, and the instructor might put a new weapon in your hands at that point and teach you some. So it's really that stuff does work. That helps keep people motivated when there's that next little level. You can see it, and not just attaining, but once you attain it, something gets unlocked. I think that kept me hooked for. Like I just said, it's almost 30 years. Like I don't think the last 12 months I was in a martial arts class, but I was like, you know, within the last 2 years, I was like going like, you know, a few times a week and going hard. And yeah. Not doing full contact sparring because of the jaw thing. But
it's a journey. I mean, we use the word journey a lot, but really it is, because there's lots of ups and downs. There's lots of times where you maybe go backwards even, or you have to take a break, or maybe you fail, or you feel like you're failing, and those types of things. Those are tough things to deal with, and that structure really did, I think, push me, and that's why I believe in it so much today. Even working with coaching clients who are looking to, lose 100 pounds or something like that. Like, it's hard when you start to look at that big task ahead. So it's important, I think, for anybody who's listening who is working towards something big or has a big goal, to set yourself small, achievable goals along the way. Set yourself important, small, achievable goals that do give you something. But do that. Don't focus so much on always how far away you are from that end goal. Focus on the journey, focus on the process, focus on everything else that's involved in that. Because then once you get there, just like when we got our black belts, right? You get to a place and you don't even realize what you've become until you've become it, right? Because of all those little things that you've worked on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nice and gradual.
Yeah.
How it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And that for me is like really the biggest thing it's one of the biggest thing that changed once I did get my black belt, was just that realization of like, holy cow, like all these things that I've been working on, like now I'm starting to like understand how that all comes together. It wasn't just about learning that technique so that I could get that belt. It was about the process of learning that technique, and then how that technique built to this technique. And then because I perfected this small, simple technique, it made learning this technique easier, like those types of things. And then teaching and stuff also really evolved that too, because then you see it from the other side of it, right? The other thing that was really tough for me was when I did become a black belt. So as I progressed to my black belt, I always did really well in competitions. I always performed well. I was always walking in confident that there's a good chance I'm going to win here, because I put the work in, because I was very, very dedicated, just like you were, looking up to people like you who were working so hard and stuff. It really pushed me as well. But when I got my black belt, and I was this 18-year-old kid, and I was like so excited to be in that black belt club, I was really taken back that first year and a half of having my black belt, because first of all, I hadn't earned their respect. I kind of had it in my head that once I'm a black belt, like I'm going to walk in and everybody's going to respect me. Well, they didn't.
And you're also their competition now.
And it's a different level of competition. There's a different mindset. And so, I'd be walking up to black belts that I looked up to and stuff, and like, hey, how's it going? Like, going to shake their hand and stuff. And they're like, get out of here. Like, I'm not talking to you right now. Right. And so it was like, and I think that's really changed, at least in my world in Alberta here. I think that has changed quite a bit, where the black belt community is
more
a lot
inclusive.
It's a lot more inclusive. It's a lot more about growth and that type of thing. However, that first year being a black belt, like I got my butt kicked. Like I don't even think I won a single medal in sparring. Like I placed here and there in forms, but in sparring and fighting, like I don't think I got a single medal for a year and a half. And that was to me like a huge shock, where I was now in a position again where I'm like, okay, maybe I've reached my peak here. Like, okay, I got my black belt, but maybe these guys and girls are just on a whole different level than me. And this is kind of my ceiling.
And I just jump in here quickly, because I think that's the type of fallacious, or like the fallacy type thinking where, we tend to look at others and say, well, they just have it, whatever it is, and I don't have it. And like, I've thought that about certain things in my life at certain periods too. And it's like, all I had to do was just kind of keep going.
Yeah.
And then I achieved that. And then people look at me like, it must be easier for you. You just have this or that, or like, you must just have some natural talent. And it's like, no.
Yeah. And the amazing thing about that time period now was that now that I was getting my butt kicked and feeling very discouraged and those types of things, that cold, hard-nosed instructor of mine was there. Like he was there. He was, okay, let's work on this. Okay, let's make this better. And that all of a sudden it looked differently through my eyes, and like it gives me goosebumps actually, even just like talking about it. Like I literally just got goosebumps now, because it was like a flip switched and my perspective changed, and I was like, give me more of that criticism. Like I need more, like, and I wanted to work harder and harder. And then when, like I still wasn't like a top guy. I still don't think I am right now, but like I wasn't winning consistently until he walked away. He graciously asked me to take over the club that he was instructing, the students that he was instructing. And when we talked about that pressure of having the students and stuff, well, my mindset changed, and I was putting that pressure was still there, and that pressure was causing me to be worse.
Yeah, that's not surprising, because you almost freeze up.
You freeze up.
Not just physically, almost like spiritually or emotionally, because you freeze up because you don't want to mess up. Yeah. And I think that comes up a lot. Even like what you said with the criticism there, like I've seen people get almost hooked on it, because what's happening is you are letting go and you're dropping the fear of being criticized. Yep. And same with like seizing up and not performing as well, because you have a fear maybe of looking poorly in the eyes of your students or something like that. But my antidote for that kind of fear and everything is always just getting your reps in. That always does it for me. But,
yeah. And for me it was very much about, I remember specific, like I can picture the tournament, like I remember it specifically. And my dad has always been like my biggest coach, right? Like other than my instructor, my dad is kind of like my second coach, where he's always on the sideline. He's always watching and assessing and helping me figure things out. And I remember talking to him about it. I'm like, I'm just like, I'm so scared. Like if I don't start winning, what are my students going to think about me? Like they're going to be like, who is this guy that took over the club? Like he's clearly not worthy of this position, right? Yeah. And for me, the switch went off when I talked to my dad, and we said, like, forget about all that. Like, just remember like why you're doing what you're doing. And the reason I was doing it is because I liked it, because it was fun. I liked that competitiveness. I liked that working hard. I liked overcoming the adversity, right? That like really like fed me. That was my oxygen. And so when I remembered that, and I thought, okay, let's just go have fun. Like, forget about winning, losing. Let's go in with zero expectation. I'm probably going to lose. Let's go and just have as much fun as possible. And as soon as I started to do that, I started to win. I started to get better. I was looser, less pressure. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I was like, win, 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 right? Yep. And that for me was a huge lesson, and something that I really learned from being a black belt was, first of all, I'm not a superhero. I'm not always the best at everything. There are going to be people there that are better, but those people that are better and those situations that do create that adversity is what's going to make me better. Because if I went in and I know people who have gone into that level, that have walked in and like they're winning first place, first thing. Well, I truly don't believe that those people got their full experience, right? If you're walking in, like, let's say you go to a tournament, we've talked about this before. We go to a tournament, you win first place, but like you were up against two people.
Right. There's four people in the category, and then you're saying you're the world champion.
Yeah, you won third, or you won third place, and you're like, oh, I medaled in at Worlds, right? Or something. Like, no disrespect to anybody who's done that. You've worked hard to get there. You put in the work and you performed, and that's admirable. But it's a different feeling than if you're up against 14 people and you won third place.
Oh, for sure.
So and the last thing I'll say is just on that, because I think it's important, if there are martial artists that are listening to this, I think this is an important thing, is, I remember going to national competition and soft style forums. I went up, same thing. There's like 5 people in my division. I won first place, and I was like, okay, cool. Like, national champion, I guess I can call myself that. But then my weapons division, there was like 25 people. Yeah. And I ended up placing third place, I think, at the end. And these people were so good. Like, I remember watching them being like, I don't know how I'm going to like even compete with these guys and girls. And I remember getting third place. I was so pumped that I medaled against those guys and girls. That to me is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it is.
So
yeah,
overcoming that adversity, and that's what for me being a black belt is all about. It's that journey of like, okay, this is what I have accomplished, but it's not about the black belt, it's about what I've done to get here.
Exactly. And how you can apply those skills and life lessons today, not just for you, but for your family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So how you feeling about that? I'm feeling good.
I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
That was good. That was a good talk. It was good to chat with you about what your experience has been. Like I said, I've always looked up to you as a martial artist, and everything that you've done, you've always done it with dignity, with respect. I've always seen you as somebody who just works so hard to perfect their craft and stuff. So it's really cool for me to hear kind of from the horse's mouth. Is that the expression?
Yeah.
Yeah. So. From the black belt's mouth. No, it was cool for me to kind of hear your story. So thanks.
Awesome. Yeah. My pleasure. And then to see people like you and Sanjay. What's up, Sanjay?
Shout out.
And I mean, we could name a few. I don't know if people want us naming them, but so I'll just reserve that. We could name a few more, but to see you all come up after me and then do more than I did and create your own martial arts schools and everything, definitely warmed my heart to see that happening over the years. So, big congrats to you too.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode. We look forward to more episodes coming out. And any final remarks?
Just for me, what I found with martial arts is like just one of the secrets of life for me is really, it's like there's something to be said for just repetition. Even when you don't want to do it, you will get better at something. You will get way better at something than you ever thought imaginable. I'm doing it with darts right now. I'm so surprised I haven't talked about darts yet. I'll talk about a lot in the future, but
so many analogies.
But yeah. So that's one last remark, is just that's a big thing that I carry forth to this day too, is just, practices don't have to be big practices every time, whatever you're doing, but it's more about the frequency throughout the week, and habits are set, established and maintained through frequency, not through volume. You know what I mean? Not through 3 20-kilometer runs, but through 5 1-kilometer runs through the week. That'll keep that habit much more. Yeah, that's all I want to say.
Yeah,
go on and on and on.
Yeah, I know. Same. I could go on with this topic, right? But and for me, the biggest thing, I guess, the biggest takeaway is, work towards something. You don't have to get your black belt. You don't have to shoot for your black belt, but shoot for something. Find something that you can shoot towards, and something that is going to be tough, and work towards it, and take the steps, and enjoy the process. Because those are the things that make us grow as people, is working towards achieving something that matters to you, whatever that is.
Okay, I like it.
Awesome. Okay, thank you guys for watching or listening, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Thanks, everyone. Bye.